Chapter 12, Rebuilding, The Days After. On a billboard at the edge of Golden Gate Park, people started to post messages. They wrote their names and where they were staying. That way, families and friends could find one another. Food and water were the most necessary things. The Red Cross started to open community kitchens. They provided hot meals for people who still had no homes. Conditions in the camps were often unhealthy. Thousands of rats had fled the burning buildings. They spread illnesses among the families in the park. Army engineers built wooden barracks in the park so people could move out of the tents. The people who lived in these barracks put up signs giving the family name along with their old street and house number. Postal workers started to make lists of these so they would know where to deliver the mail. By May, stores began to reopen. However, it took years before the city recovered fully. The buildings that went up right after the disaster were still not fully prepared for earthquakes. Not until later did engineers develop better construction methods. Some areas like Chinatown were quicker to rebuild than others. City officials wanted to move the Chinese people farther away from the center of town. Fortunately, before this plan could be carried out, Chinese residents were already at work. They rebuilt the homes and businesses they had lost. Today, San Francisco's Chinatown is right where it was before the quake. Not everyone was able to recover. A homeless man with a broken leg told Jack London, "Last night I was worth $30,000. Now all I own are these crutches." Many others had similar stories. They'd lost everything. The total damage was estimated at $400 million. That would be more than $8 billion in today's money. As for how many people died, the number couldn't be counted. Estimates range from the hundreds to the thousands. Bodies had been burned up and disappeared in the fire. Soldiers had buried others where they found them. Also, city records were destroyed, records that showed who lived in San Francisco before the earthquake. Without those records, it was impossible to account for who had died or left the city. Some people decided to make a fresh start elsewhere. That is why the population of the city dropped for a time. It fell from 400,000 to a low of 110,000 by June. But many returned. As a sign of the city's rebirth, San Francisco continued with plans to hold a World's Fair in 1915. The fair opened on time. One of its tallest buildings was the Tower of Jewels, which was covered with bits of colored glass. San Francisco named itself the Jewel City. It had taken its place once again as a great and exciting place to live and visit. Searching for a bride. The morning of the earthquake, Henry Lay had arrived by train from Cleveland, Ohio. He was Chinese and was coming to marry Yun Kum. She lived with a group of students. Henry had proposed to her by mail. Yun had accepted, and their wedding was scheduled for Sunday. Henry made his way through the broken streets to Chinatown, where Yun lived. People there had already fled from the fire. For the next 3 days, Henry wandered around the wrecked city. Every time he saw a Chinese face, he asked about Yun. He finally learned from a minister that Yun's school had gone to San Anselmo across the bay. Henry lined up with thousands of people waiting for the ferry. He was the last person through the gate on his trip. Henry's persistence paid off. He found Yun. On Sunday, in a chapel in San Anselmo, the young couple was married. Yun's teacher wrote, "Just after the wedding, Mr. and Mrs. Henry Lay started for their home in Cleveland amidst showers of California roses. So romance with its magic touch helped us for a time to forget our great loss."